Welcome back to part two of my conversation with Erik Wexler of Providence, Operations and Strategy President for the South region of Providence. Erik, it's great to talk to you again. I'm excited to talk to you about some really timely news.
Thanks, Josh. It's good to be here. And there is a lot going on. So there's always a lot to talk about with you.
Yeah, and we are missing our third wheel, if you will, Aziza Barnes, who has shared some awesome information in part one about being a part of the Social Justice Committee at Providence and all the great work that's being done on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we want to wish her and her family the best as she's out on maternity and they welcome a new member. So, Erik, I just wanted to take some time and chat with you about the things that have been happening in really the spring of 2021 that have impacted your Social Justice Committee. Can you share a little bit about those things with us?
Well, we continue to make a lot of progress towards creating a level of equality, justice, and inclusion that permeates across our entire Southern California region, and for that matter, all the work we're doing across Providence as a whole. Aziza, who is the chair of the committee, and as you said, on maternity leave, has appointed a replacement, and he's doing a wonderful job of continuing to advance our initiatives. But part of what we're working on are enhanced policies on how we interact with one another and how we kind of check in and make sure that there is a culture that supports each other and understands what we go through as colleagues to feel included, not only in the work that we do every day, but of course, in how we advance each other in the organization. It's really important work.
Well, as we discuss these things, one of the things we wanted to share is just as we finished recording part one, it was announced that the Derek Chauvin verdict was going to be released. And as we were approaching the 1-year anniversary of the George Floyd tragedy, so we wanted to come back and be able to share with the audience how these things in particular have impacted not just the committee, Erik, but your team as a whole, your employees across the board.
Well, this trial and of course this murder has created a lot of side bar conversations among colleagues. This murder, and I'm going to be very clear about using the words murder, was a wake-up call. And it's been happening, and it didn't just happen to George Floyd. It happened to a lot of wonderful people before Mr. Floyd, and now we're seeing people after Mr. Floyd, the same type of violence occurring from those we expect to protect us. And I want to be careful that there are many, many good law enforcement officers out there that protect all of us and we depend upon. But there is clearly a need, and the thing you would hear by the water cooler or in our discussions at the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, there is a need for law enforcement to have better training. We have not done a good job in the United States on ensuring that they have the skills to de-escalate situations, to assess what occurs, before they enter into it. The adrenaline starts flowing, and they wind up making a very tragic error. Now, this trial, all of us were watching it very carefully.
Yep.
I hope and pray and want to believe that it has allowed for our society to see that true justice can occur when a law enforcement officer commits what is a horrific crime and murdering somebody. For a long time, I think there has been mistrust among the justice system that they would not convict, even a jury would not convict a police officer if a murder occurred. And I think this has given us a sense of confidence that the right decision can be made.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing the need for better training. I appreciate you kind of taking it to the extreme other too, that there's not just this kind of code of silence amongst law enforcement, that's existed for our entire lifetime to protect each other. But the self-policing of law enforcement, I think, is what we're starting to see a shift in. And just as you reiterated, I am a huge supporter of law enforcement and appreciate all the protection that's given. It's those few bad apples that really make this whole situation a discussion that shouldn't need to happen, but it's been going on for years. And I as well am happy that it's being addressed. And we're starting to see a shift. Unfortunately, that shift has to happen. It should have happened long ago. So I just wanted to also ask you a little bit about, as we wrap up, how individuals can learn more. Just maybe an individual that says, this is great what Providence is doing. I'd love to learn more, see if I can contribute or see if I can just share it with my community. Can you talk a little bit about how individuals, whether employees or just patients or just community members, can learn more about the committee?
Absolutely, Josh. I would begin by saying that as we continue down our journey in 2021 and begin to head towards 2022, we at Providence are even more fueled by creating a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Every single day, we wake up looking for ways of enhancing that and showing love and compassion for everybody that not only works in our organization, and everybody that we treat within our organization, but also out in the communities that we serve. You can go onto the providence.org website, and there you will find not only news releases and other information about our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, but also how we are addressing health disparities. For example, I'll just speak about, since I'm standing here in Southern California right now, we are and have stood up a good number of vaccination clinics, pop-up clinics out in at-risk communities, in senior centers, in churches, and in other locations that make it easy for people to access. A good example is we partnered with Edwards Life Sciences, just a great organization here in Irvine. They put up $500,000 for us to create a vaccination center on their premises. You can also access on the In Our Circle channel. We have the Providence location within Our Circle that speaks to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that will give you specifics about what our DEI Council does and what our vision and most importantly, what our objectives are.
Of all the Future of Health campaign interviews I've done with different Providence executives, and Eric, this is, the second or third time we've gotten together, there's no question in my mind that this one is the most powerful and impactful and timely. And as you said, the whole DEI conversation was directly related and impacted by the pandemic and access to vaccines and all the other things that you and I have dealt with as hospital executives through the years about equal access in the hospital and on the floors and all those other things. I wanted to just kind of wrap up the conversation by congratulating you and Providence for really walking the walk. And it was announced a couple days ago that Providence has donated $1.7 billion and really invested as well as donated in improving the health of your communities. That is an awesome number, 7 different states. And it took me to your website where I found 4 initiatives. And I wanted to ask if it was okay if I address what those 4 initiatives are, because you've summed them all up in just this brief 10-minute conversation. And the first being the foundations of health, ensuring that the community's most basic needs, such as food, shelter, and education, are met. And you just hit on the head of the nail. If that means a vaccine and access to a vaccine, you guys put words into action. The second one is reducing barriers to care. Just the Vax Clinic was another great example of that. Community resilience. And I think you've given several examples of that. And the fourth one being innovating for the future, which is really where this Future of Health series of interviews I've done with you and your colleagues started with that initiative. But I'm just really grateful that you all have allowed me to be a part of this conversation and Future of Health interview series because we have been able to showcase how Providence has put these things into action. I want to give you a chance to kind of address those and again, congratulate you. 1.7 billion with the B, folks. So Eric, thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, Josh. As an organization of our size that serves the Western United States, we are deeply invested in our communities, and it started 175 years ago by a group of women. How many corporations in the United States 175 years ago were created by a group of women who now can watch from the heavens at the number of people that we serve? So this investment, community benefit investment that you speak about, it stands on the shoulders of the Sisters of Providence and the Sisters of St. Joseph of Orange and others that allowed us to be Providence. And what it really goes back to, Josh, is who we are as human beings. If you just take a step back and you say, what do I expect for myself? I expect human dignity. I expect compassion. And I really want love and health. Well, it's our responsibility to make sure that happens for every human being that lives in our community, no matter what they look, sound, or wherever they came from. Put yourself in their shoes and serve in that way.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great note to end on. You have not just showcased what's been done, but really shown your passion for doing the right thing, all the things that you just summarized. And folks, this brings us to the end of our conversation. Erik, as always, it's great to spend time with you and to learn more. And thank you again for just pioneering and spearheading all of these efforts in this, just the crazy years that were 2020 and 2021. And hopefully we can put this pandemic behind us and start to see tremendous progress on the DEI issues that you've mentioned. So thank you so much again.
Thanks, Josh. You can count on us being fully engaged in that.